Hello and welcome to Reviews. As always, I'm Plume Noir, and this is Star Wars #1. Now, I didn't realize that Marvel was doing their reboot. Well, not reboot, but where they end a series and then give it a new #1. Um, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Here's JR. Previous take of the video, he just kept walking over the book and laying on it, so I'm trying to keep him off to the side. Um, I didn't realize that they had basically ended the previous books and started over with #1s. I should not be surprised because that's kind of Marvel's, modus operandi. Although normally they do it with books that are failing. And as far as I know, the Star Wars books have been doing pretty well. They were actually the top of Marvel's charts for at one point. Now, I was reading the books when they first started, and the first one was pretty good. The first few series issues were good. This and the Darth Vader one, which the Darth Vader one was pretty good. And I read them up until just a little bit after the Vader Down crossover storyline, which was really good because you get to see how badass Vader is. You know, when he's stranded on a planet and has to take out all the rebels by himself. And yeah, I like that, but then eventually I kind of, I don't know, lost interest and stopped reading the books. And, especially Dr. Afra, who, you just knew she was going to get space. Yeah, here's JR just trying to keep him at bay. You just knew he was, excuse me, she was going to get spaced at some point, but she kept going. She got her own series. She became really popular, which was okay. It was an okay character, but I thought a little bit went a long way. I never read her books, so. This actually takes place after The Empire Strikes Back. Okay, okay. Not quite after, just before the ending. So it's in the Empire Strikes Back timeline. As you can tell by the outfits, the hairstyle, and everything. We got Lando here. But it doesn't take place right after. It takes place just before the ending. It's actually during the movie. And it's not bad. It's pretty good. Um, one thing I will say that I did not like about this book. Before I get into that, I want to talk about the cover. It's a trading card cover. I always say I hate these trading card covers, where it does actually say what's going on in the issue. It's just a bunch of poses and everything. But this is a Marvel a movie property, and this is basically how you identify. It's the stock picture here. We've all seen this before. We've seen this exact same pose with them. It's just basically the Tracy of all that. I'm going to give it a pass since it is highly recognizable as opposed to, X-23 just standing there showing her claws. You kind of know what you're getting into with Star Wars. You know it's not going to go too out of bounds from the movies. What I did not like was how this book opened. Um, let's take a look. Okay, we get a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Got it. A two-page spread of the Star Wars logo. You can almost hear the music kicking in. And then we get our crawl. The Destiny Path Part 1, that's the name of the storyline. I see what Soule was going for with this. Charles Soule is the writer. Trying to evoke that movie um, opening, a long time ago. 4 pages. 4 pages. There's no reason to evoke a movie opening in a different medium. I get what you're trying to do. This book is already a little bit oversized. I didn't do a page count, but it is a $5 book. And to waste 4 pages on this, especially the two-page spread, where, you just have the Star Wars logo, I'm actually surprised all this black isn't rubbing off of my fingertips. Yeah, I felt this was kind of a waste. And I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing. The other problem with this is we get the full page ad of the Marvel Champions. We flip over. My eyes saw the Stan soapbox here. I actually ignored this page, thinking it was another ad. And yeah, you see, basically it's a full page, splash page of Luke losing his hand. And the 2 pages here where it's basically what's happening to the hand as it falls down. If Ray got his lightsaber, is Luke's decayed hand still sitting down? Did anyone ever recover that? And then it goes back to the story proper, where we have Luke. He's on the Millennium Falcon. The nice thing about a lightsaber taken off your hand is that it cauterizes the wound immediately. So he's not going to deal with blood loss, but he's still going to have shock. His body's still going to be in shock from the injury. And you see that, he looks pretty pale, the darkness around the eyes, kind of like how he looked at the end of Empire Strikes Back. And this is as they're leaving Cloud City before they get back to the rest of the Rebel Alliance, and they're arguing with Lando. And what I like about this book is, remember, Luke doesn't know what happened to them yet. He just got rescued. He's injured. He's dealing with what he found out and his injury. Basically finding out that Vader is his father. Ben and Yoda basically either lied by omission or just flat out lied to him. And it's really a nice thing that's been overlooked. I mean, we all know this. We've all seen the movies. By the time Return of the Jedi comes around, Luke is already a Jedi Master because of the few years that happened in there. And seems to have gotten over it. This book is dealing with, this major blow that he's been dealt. And, Lando has no idea who Luke is, why he's so important. And Leia has to point out that, his name is Luke Skywalker. He destroyed the Death Star. And Lando's like, that's why he's so important to Vader. And there's little bits in this that really felt like the movie characters, where they're talking about everything they lost. Lando says, look, we all lost a lot today. You lost a friend, I lost an entire city, a lot of people I care about back on Bespin. 3PO busts him with, I lost my arms and legs, I was blown apart. And Leia's little kind of surprised face. Well, for a bit anyway. And they're talking about trying to get Han back, and 3PO busts in with, oh dear, to Jabba the Hutt? He will certainly murder Captain Solo the first chance he gets. And again, another beat panel where now Leia's looking more angry. I found this a little bit funny because it's 3PO's not thinking before he speaks, as much as a droid can think before they speak. It's little bits like this that lighten up the tension. And of course, they have to fill in Luke. Han, where is Han? What are you talking about? And a lot of exposition to fill in Luke to where we're at in the story. But it makes sense because Luke wasn't there. He needs to know what's going on. And, he talks about how he reached out to Ben during the battle. And he's still, throughout the book, reliving losing his hand. And about how, Ben didn't answer him. And so now we go into the escape, and they have to meet up with the rest of the rebels who are being held by a new commander that's introduced to the series, who came up with a clever idea to run a blockade between a star and their star destroyers. And you see the energy of the star here, and I'm sure it's just the perspective, but it looks like that X-Wing is just right next to the star. And the entire time I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, how exactly does a blockade like this work? Can't they go like around or over or under, go around the star? I guess I 3D space battles in that regard, when they talk about setting up blockades, always kind of make me wonder exactly how they're doing it and how they. Maybe it's just that they got caught. And we get to introduce to the commander here and explaining what she's doing. There is a little bit of a nod to the new sequels, where we are introduced to Poe Dameron's dad. I guess maybe that's just kind of a throwaway to hook the two series together a little bit better. I was okay with it. I was more interested in the rest of these foot soldiers that are like, yeah, it's a space battle, nothing we can do, and so either wake me if we're boarded or we get destroyed. So, yeah, I'd like to see more of these characters. I don't know if they're from another show or um, another series. I'm not that hardcore into Star Wars anymore. I'm sorry, I admit it. I, I I've read a lot of bad Star Wars books during the period when there was no Star Wars, and so I don't really chase out too much of the other canon. And some of the art is really cool. It almost looks too much because you see all these green lasers, and it just looks like someone took a little container of those those cupcake topping things, the little, you know what I'm talking about. I can't think of what they're called right now, but it looks like someone just dumped a bunch of green ones all over the page, and makes it seem like this battle is really, really crazy. You see just all the lasers firing everywhere. But then the Millennium Falcon shows up, just like it always does, and turns the tides, which is to say it's pretty much in canon how it works in the movies. And they're talking about how they're exactly going to do this. Lando is like, we're taking on a starfighter, a star destroyer, and Leia says, uh, she doubts him because the he says, I believe in the cause, but there's four star destroyers, and Leia's like, the cause, don't make me laugh. So Lando is still not trustworthy to them because remember, he sold them out to the Empire, but he even defends himself, saying, Darth Vader came to my city that I was running. He's, the Empire, and I'm just trying to keep my people safe. I had to do what I had to do. And one thing about this book is you're reading it eventually, the tracing does get a little weird. Like, I don't know why this scene really struck me as weird because you got, Leia's badonkadonk here, and then she's turned over her shoulder, looking back, and I don't know why, but for the most part, they do that tracing where they make the characters look like they're actors, mostly, and you see some of them. It's just kind of, I don't know. This panel in particular just struck me as really weird. I don't know if it was the posing with their head. Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, I'm going to stop here because there is a great thing coming up with I'm going to stop here. Actually, I'm going to go to that. Um, where Luke is trying to man the guns. Remember this guy just got his hand chopped off, hours earlier basically. He doesn't have a way to hold the other, controller for the gun. And he falls, he's getting desperate, he's still visualizing, everything Vader said, and then just lashes out with the Force and ends up causing the TIE fighters to crash into one another and turns the tide of the battle. So it's a nice thing because we're seeing the despair, the emotions, that kind of creeping toward the dark side. What everything was worried about, what they said on Dagobah, um, about Luke. He has all these doubts, especially to, Yoda and Ben, who already saw his father go through, this fall due to his emotions. And yeah, to see Luke going down kind of the same path, so much so that he almost, spaces himself later in the book because of his lashing out. So we do have this um, where he's in a bad place, and his emotions could easily get the better of him. Now we know what's going to happen. He's going to get it together by Return of the Jedi. But remember, in Return of the Jedi, he comes out and he's all in that cool black suit, So is it going to be? eh, Are they going to fill in a story where he almost turns to the dark side? It kind of reminds me of the series Dark Horse did called The Dark Empire, where Luke did dabble in the dark side to get to the Emperor. After the Emperor came back. Because that was the thing with Rise of the Skywalker. A lot of the story beats I seem to have read in other extended universe stuff, and it seems like they just took those ideas and put them into one. So it's weird that they're not canon, but we're going to use those ideas for our movie. Let's not talk about Rise of the Skywalker. Anyway, I like this book. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I like the time frame. I like how they're actually addressing the things that Luke learned and are going to, show how it helps him develop as a character and as a Jedi. The other characters, they all seem to be written in character. And that's hard to do when everyone has seen these movies so often. We all have our own idea of what Leia would say, what Lando would say, how Chewie would react to the other characters. And I think they kept this very well. I think Soul did a good job with the characters. The likenesses sometimes were a little bit off-putting. The photo, realistic tracing that they do. It's sometimes like Greg Land when he does that. It gets a little bit creepy. But this with the kind of uh, muted palette to give them a more regular, normal complexion as opposed to, looking like they're straight out of a comic book. A few times led a little bit to uncanny valleyness, but it's not the first time I've seen this. I've actually, since this is based on a movie, I can give it a little bit of a pass. So, what would I give this? 1 o'clock. I like this book. I was surprised. I picked it up on a whim, and I figured it was just, oh god, is this just trying to cash in on Rise of the Skywalker? We're going to reboot. No, they're just moving into the next time period. So, yeah, I like this book. I was surprised. I'm going to probably keep reading this to see where they go with the Luke development. So anyway, thanks for watching. I will be back with some more videos. I did pick up Soar. I wasn't expecting to pick up Soar, so I will be checking that one out. It's the beginning of the year. There's not a lot coming out. Not as bad as Christmas, you know, period where there was like DC had nothing out, but there were a few books out this week, and I'll be checking out a few more of them. So as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.